a stretch of untouched forest, and one man prepared to carve a living space from the raw wilderness. Bringing everything in on foot means strict limits on weight and gear. The real materials are already here, waiting in the dense stands of bamboo that surround the site. He just has to harvest them. Clearing the surface debris exposes the solid ground needed for a stable foundation. With the foundational posts driven deep into the earth, the focus shifts to the floor. Fresh bamboo is highly workable, splitting cleanly along its vertical fibers when struck exactly down the center. He divides the green poles lengthwise to create flat, uniform slats. Laid side by side, these split halves form a smooth, raised decking surface. Elevating the floor is a critical survival principle in dense forests. It prevents heat loss to the damp ground, deters crawling insects, and allows air to circulate underneath. Moving to the structural framework, he carves precise saddle notches into the tops of the vertical posts. This curved profile is essential. It distributes the heavy downward load of the roof far more effectively than a flat cut ever could. A well-carved joint relies on gravity and geometry to hold the structure rigid, reducing the reliance on artificial fasteners. Every trimmed slat and carefully shaped notch creates a framework capable of flexing slightly in high winds without snapping. The bamboo absorbs the stress. The wall panels are guided into the newly prepared joints. To lock the grid in place, he lashes the intersections tightly with thin wire. While natural cordage works, wire provides immense tensile strength and won't rot in the humid air. The lashing technique acts as a localized tourniquet, binding the slick bamboo surfaces firmly against one another. As the wire bites into the green outer skin, the connection locks solid. The open-air framework quickly takes the shape of a defined room. With the secondary frame raised, he locks down the upper joints. Twisting the wire with pliers applies maximum torque, pulling the horizontal beams tight into their saddles. The skeletal walls are now fully rigid. For the upper walls, the process of splitting raw material begins again. A short, sharp hatchet makes quick work of the bamboo, separating it into thin, flexible slats. These pieces don't need to bear heavy loads. They simply act as an enclosing skin. He installs the vertical slats one by one, aligning them against the horizontal frame to create sturdy corners and solid walls. Even with an open-air design, defining the space provides vital psychological comfort in the deep woods. Reaching higher, he secures the primary horizontal supports for the roof. He works his way along the upper perimeter, clamping wire around every crucial intersection. Heavy-duty pliers allow him to crank the bindings down until the wire sinks slightly into the bamboo's tough outer layer. Tapping the joints with a hammer seats them perfectly flush before the final tightening. A smaller blade allows for fine woodworking. He shaves away hatchet layers to create an angled notch, engineering a custom fit for the roof's pitch. The prepared pole is carried to the rising structure. Working with green bamboo has a distinct advantage. The wood is pliable enough to bend slightly under pressure without fracturing. He secures the final rafters, creating a sturdy overhead grid. To combat the heavy, sudden downpours typical of this environment, natural thatching is bypassed in favor of a modern barrier. He unrolls a massive sheet of clear, heavy-duty plastic. Draping it over the framework requires careful tensioning to prevent water from pooling in low spots. Pulling the canopy taut, he drives nails directly through the plastic and into the dense bamboo beneath. The transparency is a deliberate choice. It completely seals out the driving rain while allowing natural sunlight to flood the interior. Using a knife, he trims away the excess overhang to prevent wind from catching the edges and tearing the roof loose. With the drainage trench dug outside, he returns to the interior to reinforce the pattern lattice. The woven design provides ventilation while blocking larger predators. A final pass over the primary connections ensures nothing shifts under load. Over time, the freshly cut bamboo will dry, turn yellow, and shrink slightly. Tightening these wire lashings now preempts that natural contraction, keeping the joints from developing a dangerous wobble. He trims away the protruding ends of the horizontal supports, leaving a clean, snag-free interior. The main structure now stands complete. It is an elevated, weatherproof fortress, perfectly integrated into the natural geometry of the surrounding forest canopy. construction demands massive caloric output, and survival requires a reliable heat source. He crosscuts a fallen log to build up a stockpile of heavy fuel. Using the hatchet, he splits the lighter, more fibrous wood to create kindling. Splitting exposes the dry inner grain, which catches a spark far easier than the damp bark. Pulling the halves apart by hand reveals the straight, clean fibers, perfect for feeding a newly born flame. Preparation now means warmth later. The plastic canopy is immediately put to the test. Rain drums against the transparent roof, but the interior remains completely dry. Outside, a hollowed-out bamboo gutter successfully catches the runoff, directing the heavy water flow away from the shelter's vulnerable foundation. Managing water is just as important as blocking it. Uncontrolled runoff can easily erode the supporting soil. As the storm breaks, he strings a line of globe lights along the upper balcony. While the primary goal of this build is raw survival, introducing soft ambient lighting transforms the structure from a windbreak into a genuine home. Running the wire carefully under the shelter of the roofline protects the electronics from the lingering moisture. The small comforts matter in isolation. The warm glow pushes back the suffocating darkness of the deep woods. Water security is the next priority. A heavy plastliner transforms a simple bamboo enclosure into a watertight reservoir, creating a reliable on-site water bank. He carefully pours transferred water into the new holding tank. In an off-grid environment, having a bulk supply of water directly adjacent to the living space eliminates the dangerous need to navigate slick forest trails in the dark. The plastic liner prevents the water from seeping back into the porous soil, holding it cleanly in reserve for cooking, cleaning, and hydration. Every liter poured into this tank represents a massive savings in future labor. Water weighs over 8 pounds per gallon. Moving it in bulk during the daylight hours is a calculated, strategic exertion. The ripples on the surface catch the fading daylight. He fills the reservoir to its brim, securing his independence from the distant stream for the days ahead. Inside the shelter, the fire pit is brought to life. A controlled burn within a bamboo structure requires careful engineering. The hearth is lined with thick stone and earth to insulate the flammable floorboards from the intense radiant heat. By laying 2 stout green bamboo poles across the open flames, he creates a temporary, rudimentary stovetop. Green bamboo contains enough internal moisture to resist burning long enough to cook a meal. The steady draft flowing through the slatted walls feeds oxygen to the fire. keeping it burning hot and clean while pushing the blinding smoke upward and out through the ventilated eaves. With the hearth blazing, he organizes his provisions on the bamboo table. Cooking in the wild requires strict efficiency. Having every ingredient prepped and within arm's reach prevents food from burning over the unpredictable flames. He heats a pan of oil until it shimmers. Sliding cubed tofu into the hot oil triggers an immediate, aggressive sizzle. The high heat instantly sears the exterior, creating a protective crust that stops the tofu from absorbing too much grease. Frying over an open wood fire is a delicate balancing act. There are no dials to adjust the temperature, only the physical manipulation of the pan closer to or further from the coals. He uses a wooden spatula to keep the pieces moving, ensuring an even, golden brown fry. Once the cubes are properly crisped, he lifts them from the boiling oil, setting them aside to drain. The flavor base comes next. He rapidly chops fresh green onions and shallots. Garlic and red chilies are prepped to provide a potent, warming kick. Night has fully fallen outside, the structure glowing softly among the dark trees. He scrapes the aromatic garlic into the residual hot oil. The moisture in the vegetables hits the fat, instantly releasing a dense cloud of highly fragrant steam. The shallots and green onions follow, blistering in the intense heat to release their essential oils. The fried tofu is reintroduced to the pan, tumbling together with the sizzling aromatics. A final dash of dry seasoning binds the flavors together. What began as raw materials in a backpack has been transformed into a desperately needed hot meal. After dinner, the temperature drops rapidly. Relying solely on a headlamp, he crouches in the dark to adjust the interior plastic lining. The barrier seals off drafts, trapping the fire's residual heat inside the sleeping quarters. The stone hearth continues to radiate warmth long after the flames die down. The dense stone absorbs the thermal energy, acting like a natural battery that slowly releases heat into the small, enclosed space. It fights off the deep chill of the forest. A quick snack of fresh vegetables provides a burst of hydration. Noticing a persistent draft, he decides to reinforce the perimeter. He measures a new bamboo pole, wiring it horizontally across the frame to divide a large open window. Stretching a sheet of clear plastic tightly across this new opening creates an instant windbreak. This transparent barrier stops the chilling cross breeze from stripping heat out of the shelter, while still preserving the expansive view of the surrounding woods. Small, iterative improvements like this turn a basic shelter into a sustainable living space. He steps outside to custom cut a final support piece for the roof. Bringing it inside, he locks it into the overhead grid. Tightening the wire lashes around these upper joints stiffens the entire canopy against the sudden, violent gusts that often sweep through the tree line at night. Every additional cross member distributes the wind load. The next morning brings a major structural modification. He saws directly through the tightly lashed floorboards, deliberately weakening the platform to create a rectangular access hatch. Removing these slats opens a vertical corridor to the ground below. To navigate that new hatch, he needs a ladder. He selects a thick green bamboo pole and saws a deep angled notch into its surface. Green bamboo is ideal for load-bearing steps. It hasn't dried out and become brittle, meaning it can support a person's entire body weight without suddenly splitting. He carries the heavy uprights to the shelter and carefully mounts the rungs. Testing the horizontal steps with his heavy boots ensures the bindings won't slip under dynamic pressure. The completed ladder provides safe, rapid access between the upper living deck and the muddy forest floor. To protect this new entryway from the elements, he adjusts the exterior wall panels and stretches another heavy plastic sheet over the frame. Pulling the plastic taut ensures rain will shed rapidly, rather than pooling. The shelter is steadily expanding outward. Down on the dirt floor, the lower level needs heavy reinforcement. He plumbs a new vertical post, checking its alignment before locking it into the grid. A perfectly vertical post transfers weight straight down into the earth, maximizing its compressive strength. A rectangular frame is inherently prone to swaying. To fix this, he brings in a bundle of thin, strong bamboo strips. Positioning parallel poles horizontally across the interior binds the scattered vertical supports into one unified, rigid block. This lower subframe forms the foundation for permanent interior furniture. He drives a new vertical pole deep into the red earth, tapping it down to guarantee a level footing. Then comes the most critical upgrade: diagonal cross-bracing. Securing a bamboo pole at an angle across the square frame instantly stops the structure from shearing sideways. Triangles are the strongest shape in architecture, and locking this geometry into the lower frame makes the hut practically immovable. With the lower walls braced, he begins outfitting the interior space. A machete trims a bamboo pole to sit perfectly flush against the wall slats. He wires it tightly to the vertical supports. Sliding another post into place creates a heavy-duty partition. Laying a thick horizontal beam across this new frame forms the rigid skeleton for a permanent bench. Elevating the resting surface keeps gear out of the dirt and away from dampness. Moving back to the upper deck, he installs a towering support post, tying the two levels together. Leaning over the edge, he threads additional bamboo slats into the roof overhang, extending the drip line further away from the living quarters. A heavy woven bamboo mat is measured and prepared for the wall. Outside, he uses a blunt pole to aggressively tamp down the loose earth around the foundational posts, compacting the soil to lock the heavy timber firmly in place. Hammering a wooden peg into the hard ground establishes an anchor point for an exterior addition. He cuts down smaller bamboo segments on the ground, assembling a lightweight, slatted storage rack that will keep muddy boots and heavy tools outside the clean living space. Attention shifts from the house to the land. He splits short segments of bamboo, feeding a small, intense fire in a nearby clearing. Burning the dry brush and scattered construction debris doesn't just clear physical space. The resulting wood ash is highly alkaline and rich in potassium, making it an excellent natural fertilizer for the acidic forest soil. Sitting by the fire, he uses his hatchet to carve deep notches to to a pile of thick bamboo poles. These won't be weight-bearing house pillars. They are the stakes for a defensive perimeter. Shaping the wood near the flames allows him to harden the sharpened points in the fire, drawing out moisture and making the stakes far more resistant to rot. He clears the ash-covered topsoil exposing the dense dirt underneath. Taking the heavy, fire-hardened bamboo poles, he drives them deep into the ground. These four corner posts establish the permanent footprint of his new garden, anchoring it firmly against the rough terrain. The four vertical stakes stand tall against the ash-covered clearing, a stark geometric claim on the wild landscape. To connect them, he prepares the horizontal rails. Using the machete, he trims the heavy bamboo poles down to the exact lengths required to span the gaps. A successful garden in the deep woods is a constant battle against foraging animals. The fence must be high enough to deter jumpers and tight enough to stop burrowers. Precision in these perimeter rails dictates the strength of the entire barrier. He sets the long rails horizontally between the corner posts, lashing them tight. Next comes the lattice. He binds thin, vertical bamboo slats along the horizontal rails, creating a tight, woven grid. Wiring every intersection is tedious, exhausting work. But a rigid lattice is the only way to keep hungry wildlife out of a food supply. With the impenetrable perimeter locked down, he steps inside the enclosure to prepare the earth. The soil here is compacted and choked with dormant root systems. Using a hand tool, he aggressively breaks up the red dirt, overturning the heavy clods to aerate the ground. Loosening the earth allows delicate new roots to push downward easily, rather than wasting energy fighting through hardpan clay. The surrounding ash is worked into the beds, balancing the pH. Surrounded by the tall bamboo frame, he finalizes the enclosure. The heavy grid ensures that the caloric energy about to be planted won't be stolen by the forest. With the beds turned, he digs a shallow hole in the soft red dirt. He drops a small seed into the depression, gently pulling the loose soil back over it to protect it from the intense midday heat. Proper burial depth is crucial. Too shallow, and it dries out. Too deep, and the sprout exhausts itself before reaching the sun. To finish the fortress, he installs a heavy horizontal bamboo pole along the very top of the vertical stakes, capping the fence line. This top rail locks the entire structure together, preventing the tall stakes from splaying outward over time. Standing in the center of the freshly turned plot, he checks the alignment of the soaring lattice walls. The garden is now a fully secured, dedicated zone of cultivation. As evening approaches, he turns to the electrical system. Reaching up, he mounts a bright fixture to the interior ceiling. Out on the balcony, he strings decorative lights along the railing, securing the small bulbs tightly against the bamboo. The fire burns bright in the bamboo-lined hearth, while the string lights cast a warm, inviting glow over the shelter as the dark forest closes in. Walking back from the tree line, the illuminated structure stands as a solitary beacon in the pitch-black wilderness. He climbs onto the roof to make final adjustments to the exterior rigging, navigating the steep pitch by feel and memory. High above the ground, he mounts a small, green-shaded lantern. Positioning a light source at the highest point of the structure casts a wide pool of ambient light down over the camp, pushing the perimeter of the darkness further back into the trees. It marks a psychological boundary between the wild unknown and a tamed, secure home. Every adjustment in the dark is deliberate, ensuring the electronics are safe from incoming weather. Inside, illuminated only by the flicker of the open flames, his hands move quickly, chopping a potato on the wooden board to start the evening meal. He pours oil into the heavy black pan suspended over the fire. Adding the chopped potatoes to the sizzling fat, he relies entirely on the sound and smell to gauge the cooking process, working by the ancient, steady rhythm of an open hearth. Once the potatoes are tender and browned, he tips the heavy pan, pouring the hot food out. Using a wooden spoon, he serves the meal onto a plate by the fire. A hot meal at the end of a punishing day is the ultimate reward for the sheer physical toll of off-grid construction. From the outside, the two-story hut glows fiercely against the night, a pocket of civilization carved out of nothing. Inside, he sits quietly in the cozy, elevated space, holding a flashlight. The warm fairy lights reflect off the yellowing bamboo walls and the simple wooden counter. The silence of the forest is absolute, broken only by the crackle of the hearth. In this elevated sanctuary, the sheer isolation of the environment becomes peaceful rather than threatening. A metal kettle rests on the counter beside a vintage lantern, ready for the morning. Standing under the fairy lights, he uses both hands to adjust a slatted bamboo wall panel. Sliding the vertical screen into place acts as a final door against the night air. The precision of the joinery holds true even in the dark. It is a space built to be lived in, entirely reliant on the materials gathered from the mud below. He secures a heavy horizontal pole across the top of the screen, locking the barrier in place. This final act of closure secures the perimeter for the night. Looking at the finished structure from a distance, the glowing two-story hut is totally isolated against the pitch-black forest. What was once just a patch of dirt and wild timber is now a working machine for living. The rain is diverted, the wind is blocked, and the fire is contained. In the end, the foundation, the walls, and the surrounding garden operate as one unified system. It is a place that produces, protects, and sustains itself, standing as a quiet testament to human endurance and foresight in the wild.